Brian Carter grew up in a small Midwestern town where Friday night basketball wasn't just a game, it was a ritual. By his senior year, Brian was the face of that ritual. 6'3", broad-shouldered, fast on his feet, and the kind of player who could electrify a gymnasium with a single dunk. Coaches said he had the talent to go pro one day. Recruiters whispered his name like a promise. His mother worked 2 jobs, often saying that basketball was Brian's ticket to a life beyond the limits of their town. On the night everything changed, Brian scored 28 points in a playoff win. He and his teammates crowded into a diner afterward, laughing, devouring burgers and fries, still buzzing from victory. It should have been one of the happiest nights of his life. Instead, it became the beginning of his downfall. The next morning, pounding fists woke him from his bed. Police swarmed the front yard. In front of his crying younger sister, they told Brian he was under arrest for armed robbery. At first, Brian thought it had to be some kind of mistake. He had never even been inside the convenience store they claimed he robbed. He hadn't held a gun in his life, but the clerk at the store had picked his photo out of a lineup. The officer said the suspect was tall, athletic, and black. Brian fit the description. That was all it took. Brian's trial lasted less than a week. The prosecution painted him as a cocky star athlete who thought he could get away with anything. They pointed to a grainy security camera still that showed a shadowy figure with a similar build. They paraded the store clerk onto the stand, who swore, under oath, that Brian was the one. The defense attorney, overworked and underfunded, did little to push back. He didn't call Brian's teammates as alibi witnesses. He didn't request the full diner security footage. He barely cross-examined the prosecution's witnesses. And when the verdict came back, guilty, Brian felt the air leave his body. 10 years. At 18, his life was effectively stolen. His scholarship disappeared within days. His name, once celebrated in headlines, was now dragged through the mud. Hometown hero turns criminal. Prison was its own trial. The first year nearly broke him. Brian was jumped, mocked, treated as another statistic. At night, he replayed that playoff game in his head just to remember who he had been before the walls closed in. But somewhere along the way, Brian found resolve. He began reading law books in the prison library, writing letters by the dozens. He contacted innocence projects, local reporters, even old coaches who might still believe in him. Most letters went unanswered. He learned quickly how easy it was to disappear when the system decided you didn't matter. Then, after 4 years, a letter came back. Enter Elena Morales. Elena Morales was a social justice attorney known for taking cases other lawyers avoided. She had a reputation for exposing wrongful convictions, often at great personal cost. Something about Brian's letter, the desperation, but also the clarity of his insistence, made her pause. She drove 3 hours to meet him in prison. Brian told her everything: the diner, the teammates, the missing footage. Elena listened, scribbling notes, her expression unreadable. Finally, she looked at him and said, "I believe you, but belief isn't enough. We need proof." Elena began digging. She discovered that the timeline prosecutors used didn't align with Brian's cell phone GPS data. She tracked down the diner owner, who confirmed there had been security cameras that night. After weeks of searching, she found an old hard drive containing the footage, blurry but unmistakable, Brian sitting in a booth at the exact time of the robbery. That alone should have been enough. But then came the twist. In police records, Elena unearthed a suppressed witness statement. On the night of the robbery, another bystander had described a man shorter, stockier, with a scar running down his cheek. That description had been buried, never shown to the defense. This was not just oversight, it was evidence suppression. Elena filed motions for appeal. The state pushed back hard, arguing the conviction was sound, dismissing the diner footage as irrelevant. Months stretched into another year as hearings were delayed. Brian, though hopeful, learned to guard his emotions. Disappointment had become a survival skill. Finally, after nearly 5 years behind bars, the case was reopened. The courtroom that day was tense. Brian's parents sat in the back, hands clenched, too afraid to hope. The prosecutor insisted eyewitness testimony was more reliable than grainy footage. But when Elena played the video showing Brian in the diner booth, laughter frozen in time, the silence in the courtroom was deafening. The judge leaned forward, brow furrowed. And when Elena revealed the suppressed witness description, the tide shifted. It was clear. Brian had been wrongfully convicted. A month later, Brian's conviction was vacated. He walked out of prison a free man. But freedom did not mean restoration. His scholarship was long gone. His athletic prime had been stolen. Coaches who once scouted him no longer returned calls. He was free, yes, but broken in ways no verdict could repair. The world outside wanted a happy ending, but Brian knew there was no neat bow to tie around lost years. Still, he refused to let bitterness consume him. With Elena's encouragement, he began speaking at schools and community forums, telling his story. He worked alongside innocence projects, helping others fight wrongful convictions. One evening, he stood in his old high school gym, the place where his dreams had first taken root. Students who only knew his story through whispers now listened to him with wide eyes. "I lost 5 years for something I didn't do," Brian told them, his voice steady but heavy. "But the truth doesn't die just because someone buries it. It waits. And when it comes out, it can set you free." The gym erupted in applause, not for the athlete he once was, but for the survivor he had become.